Hi, my name is Juan and I've just released my second free game on Steam. You can get it by using the link in the pinned comment or just searching for Mossy Pixels on that platform. This is a tiny, relaxing point-and-click game in which you can destroy images pixel by pixel by simply clicking on them. And in this devlog, I'll show you how this game went from a prototype to a finished product. Despite the obvious inspirations for this game being the early Worms games and Noita, the first mockup I made wasn't in pixel art. My initial idea was to make the destructible parts of the image easier to click, so I started with a 20 by 15 grid. This idea was bad for two reasons. One, it only gave me 300 squares to make an image with. That's a very limited amount of space. And two, it wasn't clear how to make levels using this system. Placing 300 blocks by hand every time I wanted to create a new image just didn't sound appealing at all. The solution to these problems came to me when I switched my focus to trying to make things destructible. I knew that spawning 100 falling objects every second wasn't a good option, so I learned to fake this effect. Instead of creating a new physically accurate square for every destroyed piece of the image, I just spawn a particle of the same size whenever I need it. With the help of this trick, I can make it look like there's a lot of complex stuff going on, when in reality it's just a single particle system doing its magic. After seeing that I can easily spawn hundreds of tiny falling squares, it made sense to try switching to pixel art. The core idea of this game is manipulating textures through code, namely destroying parts of that texture based on the color underneath. Therefore, I had to learn a new skill, reading the color of a pixel right under the cursor. That took me quite a few hours to figure out and felt like creating a 2D creature and giving it 2D eyes. I had to teach this image-eating worm how to see the 2D world around it. What is the pixel above it? What is the pixel to the right? Is it of the same color as the one it's already standing on? And as soon as I taught this worm to eat pixels, that's when the hours of learning truly paid off. In this footage I placed a so-called moss above the main image and told the worms to keep destroying it, following the black and white pattern underneath. And this is what the game began to look like when I combined it with the smoke and mirrors of the particle system I mentioned before. No, that's too much, that is pure madness. Here, that looks a lot better. And that's when I knew that this game was suddenly possible. Looking back, I know that there is nothing difficult about making all of this work, but back when I started, I thought of it as the hardest coding challenge I ever gave myself. And it felt really nice to know that I can tackle that. Now, since that was really all the code I needed for this tiny project, I felt free to start designing the visuals for it. Here's the first mockup I made in Sprite, and actually it almost hasn't changed during the development. The next coding challenge I wanted to deal with in Mossy Pixels is finding a quick and efficient way to swap color palettes. I never touched shader graph before, but I really wanted to add some variety to the game by letting players choose their favorite colors. So I learned how to do that with a basic custom shader and later used the same technique to enhance my recent commercial game, Turret Rampage. Then I went back to designing the visuals. For example, I improved the backgrounds a little and found a way to make sure that the destruction particles match the color of the mossy cover. Speaking of moss, this is what it used to look like in the beginning, quite plain and boring. But then I accidentally enabled two separate layers with different moss variations at the same time and created this much more interesting texture. I changed a few pixels here and there to make it look more organic and made a few more variations using the same method. But at this point I was working on two projects at the same time, and it wasn't working out well. So I decided to prioritize the aforementioned Turret Rampage and return to Mossy Pixels a few months later. The first thing I did when I started working on this game again was introducing new shapes. I thought that uncovering 100 square patterns would become boring very quickly, so I adjusted the code to accept any patterns that fit in that square. The most obvious shapes to make were the triangle, circle and trefoil, and then I moved on to more creative things like an hourglass, lock, star and so on. After getting that idea out of my head, I mustered some courage to look into the game's code, which I hadn't seen in a long time. Surprisingly, a long break helped me notice some issues in it, fixing which skyrocketed the game's framerate and made sure it would run well even on a gaming toaster. Another important thing to figure out were sound effects. If the player clicks in one place and patiently waits for the pixel-eating worm to do its job, they might be destroying, let's say, 10 pixels per second. But if they click in many different places at once, they may be destroying up to 200 pixels per second. So the question was, how do I show the intensity of pixel destruction with sound effects? The first idea was to take the solution which people often use to make the simplest virtual car engines. Just loop any sound that sounds appropriate and keep increasing or decreasing its pitch together with the car's speed. That was definitely something, but I found that the high pitch was rather annoying and didn't fit the relaxing theme I was going for. After a few other iterations, I ended up with a system which loops one sound until the destruction intensity reaches a certain level and then blends another sound into the mix. That's a very simple idea, but it's still the most complex audio system I've ever created, and I'm quite happy with it. Also, as you probably noticed, I implemented a simple custom cursor. I strongly believe that using the default cursor in a point-and-click game is one of the dumbest ways to break its immersion, so I fixed it as soon as I felt somewhat confident in the rest of the game's design. The next button I implemented was for switching color palettes, but first I had to design more color palettes, of course. Designing 10 color palettes that use only 8 colors each was quite a challenge, but at least now I'm sure that anyone playing this game will find some color scheme that suits their taste. Seeing how easy it is to beautify one's game with post-processing in Unity, I couldn't avoid doing that too. I used this feature for some slight lighting effects and the level complete animation. At this point, I looked back at the UI elements and realized that I needed more buttons than what I initially had in my mockup. Therefore, I redesigned the buttons and made separate menus for the settings, credits, and level selection pages. Speaking of level selection, I also made a button which can pick a random unfinished level for you, and that's my recommended way to play this game. Finally, as a true cherry on the top, I implemented a system which ties color palettes to specific soundtracks. Sometime before that, my favorite musician Hypersleep created a few variations of the game theme, and now you can seamlessly switch between them. I hope that this game's music will help you get in the right mood to simply relax and enjoy the moment. Last but not least, after the game was finished, I spent a few hours turning its pictures into a printable black and white format. You can get these select 90 patterns as a bonus for purchasing a so-called donation DLC. It doesn't affect the main game at all, but it's a great way to support my products and increase the chances of me making more 100% free games in the future. And that's it for today. I hope that you found this dialogue interesting and that you'll enjoy playing my new game. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more content from me in the future, and I'll see you in the next video. Farewell.